If you follow the mainstream media, you'll hear a very simple explanation for why Gen Z is poor. They drink too much coffee out. They have Netflix subscriptions, use the latest smartphones, and eat fancy avocado toast. According to them, if this lazy generation had just tightened their belts a little, just like their grandparents did, they could have bought a house with a yard by the time they were 24. This narrative is so loud and repeated so often that even Gen Z itself has started to believe it and hold itself responsible for its own economic situation. But math doesn't lie. Let's take a look at the real numbers. Let's say you buy a $1,000 smartphone and replace it every 2 years. That comes out to $500 a year, or about $40 a month. Add in the cost of coffee you buy on the go and a few digital subscriptions. That's a maximum of $200 a month in discretionary spending. Now, let's compare this to the housing crisis. In the 1980s, the price of an average home was just 3 times the average annual household income. Today, in major metropolitan areas, that ratio has risen to 10, 15, or even 20 times. The amount needed for a down payment on a home has turned into a massive chasm, one that wouldn't close even if you gave up eating avocado toast and survived on nothing but water and sunlight for 10 years. Generation Z doesn't feel poor. They were thrown into a ruthless game, one where the music stopped decades ago and all the comfortable seats in the hall have long been taken entirely by chance as latecomers. And now, in this hall where standing is forbidden, they're expected to survive by crawling on their knees. So, how did this system break down? We need to go back to that critical turning point in the early 1970s, with the severing of the final link between money and gold and the transition to a fiat currency system. The greatest transfer of wealth in history began. In the past, as the value produced by a factory worker increased, so did their wages. However, when the system changed, governments and central banks gained the power to print money without limit. What happens when there is too much money in the system? Inflation. But we're not talking about the price of milk at the grocery store. What we're talking about is asset inflation. These trillions of newly printed dollars, euros, and other currencies flow directly into stocks, real estate, and land. If you're a boomer who owned those assets in the 1980s and 1990s, you became millions of dollars richer without lifting a finger, just by sitting at home. Your home worked for you. But if you were born in the 2000s and entered the system with zero assets, relying solely on your labor, too bad. As the value of your labor erodes day by day due to inflation, the prices of the assets you dreamed of buying have skyrocketed. Generation Z was born right into the middle of this trap in the system, known as the Cantillon effect. Those who got their hands on money first got rich. The price, however, is being paid by the young people who entered the system last. If you ask a young person, "Why aren't you saving money?" the answer you'll likely get is a deep sigh. Because the ultimate goal of saving has always been clear throughout history: to buy a home, start a family, and put down roots. But today, homes are no longer places to live. They have become financial instruments for Wall Street, for massive pension funds, for global investors. Today, a massive portion of the single-family homes on the market are being purchased not by families who want to live in them, but by massive institutional funds that buy them with cash and then rent them back to those same families at exorbitant prices. You, a 25-year-old with student loan debt and a few $1,000s in your pocket, are competing against algorithms managing trillions of dollars to buy the same house. Your chance of winning this competition is mathematically zero. The result? Homeownership is no longer a measure of success, but is becoming a privilege of the feudal class. If you don't have a central property, a share of land, or an inheritance to pass down from your family, the possibility of becoming a homeowner by working a salaried job has, for the first time in modern economic history, completely vanished for an entire generation. Here is where the dark psychology behind Gen Z's much criticized spending habits comes into play. Economists call this the lipstick effect. Young people aren't stupid. They know how to do the math. They see very clearly how much they earn and how far out of reach the assets needed to make ends meet are. If I can't afford a home even after saving for years, if no matter how hard I work, the system will always keep me stuck as a renter. Why should I suffer? They ask. When they realize they can't buy the future, they use that devaluing money in their hands to buy today. An expensive coffee, a luxury concert ticket, or the latest model phone. It's not actually a craving for luxury, but a desperate attempt to chase after the only thing they can control. Small, fleeting moments of happiness. This is an acceptance of economic defeat. If you can't win the grand prize, at least you live in the moment with the consolation prize. Amid all this gloom, what do you think this generation is doing to survive? They're taking two opposing, yet entirely logical, paths. On one hand, there are those taking extreme risks to keep up with the system's pace. Why are millions of young people staring at stock market screens all day, analyzing stock trading data, or engaging in risky cryptocurrency transactions instead of using traditional savings accounts? Because they know that regular pay raises of 5 or 10% are being eroded by inflation. They're trying to break free from the trap the system has set for them by playing the game the way the rich do. That is, by seeking high returns in the capital markets. For them, the stock market isn't an investment, it's a lifeboat. On the other hand, there is a completely different defense mechanism, the safe haven strategy. Those who flee the Silicon Valley fairy tales of changing the world and the ruthless, insecure nature of the free market, where you can be kicked out at any moment, to take refuge in boring but guaranteed federal government jobs. The fact that today's American youth are spending their most productive years not on building a startup, but solely to secure solid health insurance, paid off student loans, and a safe retirement fund. By trying to land a job in Washington's heavy bureaucracy or massive government agencies is not a lack of vision. This is an attempt to flee from that savage American capitalism, which is collapsing, drives you into bankruptcy when you get sick, and offers no housing security, and seek refuge under the government's cumbersome yet protective umbrella. When the private sector can no longer promise them a new American dream, only one option remains: to secure the system. Generation Z isn't poor. They are the victims of an era where the economic rules were changed mid-game. That legendary social contract, the idea that getting an education, working hard, and following the rules guarantees a middle-class life, has been torn up and thrown away. If the macroeconomic system doesn't stop inflating asset prices and start rewarding labor again, we'll either transition to a new feudal system based entirely on inheritance, or we'll watch as the most educated, yet most angry, generation in history overthrows this system. The question here isn't why Generation Z is poor. The real question is, how much longer can this economic model, which has left an entire generation behind, hold up before collapsing under its own weight?